You're listening to the Love Over Addiction podcast. Hey, how are you? Today we're going to talk about divorce. So, a lot of you listening right now, probably all of you listening right now, love someone struggling with addiction. And when you love someone who can't seem to get sober for good, most of the time, everyone I know has always, at some point in their relationship, thought about leaving. If you're married, you think about divorce, you think about breaking up. And even though you don't want to, there's a part of you that wonders if you should, if it's the right decision for you. Because when you love someone struggling with addiction, oftentimes you wonder, how much longer can I handle this? How many times does my heart have to be broken before it just breaks and can never be put back together again? Your trust is non-existent. And your trust has been broken so many times in your relationship that you start not believing in trust anywhere with anyone. You become untrusting of everything in your life. Most importantly, yourself. And so that leads to hopelessness. That leads to a feeling of desperation, wanting change but not knowing how exactly to change it because you're not trusting what you need, what you deserve, right? So you guys know I divorced, or some of you know, for those of you that are new. I left my husband, and I'm going to go into that a little bit today. I always wondered how much longer I could take this. And I tried leaving many times. We'd get into a fight over drugs, alcohol, whatever. I'd grab my keys, I'd grab my purse, I'd head out the door, I'd get in my car, oftentimes in my pajamas because drinking usually happened at night, and I'd have nowhere to go. I had no plan. I drove around the block waiting for him to call so he could beg for me to come home, because that was ultimately the goal, right? I didn't want to really leave or break up our marriage. I just wanted him to scare him enough to get sober. I wanted to scare him into sobriety. And sometimes he played the game because it was a giant game, if we're being honest. And sometimes he played along, and sometimes he didn't want to play. And he just sat at home and got drunk. And I'd be humiliated and embarrassed because I'd have to come walk back in with my head hanging low, my pride really, damaged, my ego bruised, feeling completely unloved and wondering, well, he must not really love me, but really not wanting to believe that, because if I really truly believed in the depth of my soul that he didn't love me, then I knew I would have to leave, right? Then I would know, I am a complete loser for staying with someone who doesn't love me. And I wasn't prepared to think of myself as a loser. So I stayed and just was like, well, he does love me, but he just, he's sick. He has a disease, which is all true. And I don't know if he loved me or not. I don't even know if he loved me or not, truthfully. And it doesn't even matter, because I'm not a loser. You're not a loser. We're just nice, kind, loving people who fell in love with someone that has struggles. He's not a loser. Nobody's a loser in this equation. But you sure as heck feel like it, right? At least I did. And so I did that for years and years and years. Like, did these fake out leaving type scenarios where I was trying to manipulate him as much as he was trying to manipulate me. I was trying to manipulate him into sobriety, into admitting he had a problem, into seeing that if he lost me, and eventually when I had kids with him, if he lost the kids, how bad his life would be. Therefore, you need to choose sobriety. And it never worked. The truth is, it never worked. No matter how many days I left, no matter where I went to, if I went to his parents' house, or I went to a hotel, or I went to my family, I went to a friend, like, it never worked, right? If he, and then after a while, he started being the one leaving when he wanted to get wasted, because I had this, quote, boundary of no drinking or using drugs in the house. So then all of a sudden he was running away to go have the freedom to do whatever the hell he wanted to do and not answer to me, his nagging wife. So one day, I don't know how long we had been together, but a long time. At this point, I had had 3 children with him. And each child, I thought, well, this is going to be it. This is going to be he's going to fall in love with this baby. And I was so desperate, you guys, for him to fall in love with my kids. And I say my kids, our kids, that at the hospital, after I had C-sections, I would insist to the doctor that he gets to hold the child first, because I was under some illusion that if he held the baby first, then he could look the baby in the eyes and see that this is a part of him, and that baby, that bond, that connection would help him choose life, not death, right? Would help him choose that life is worth living for. This baby was worth living for, that this baby was worth getting sober for. And looking back on that now, it's so sad to me that I housed this child for 9 months and created this baby and worked so hard, eliminated certain foods and took care of myself physically, and my body paid such a price as women do, for having these babies. And then I give away that moment of holding that child in your arms immediately after it comes out of your body. I gave away that moment to my husband. I mean, addiction was in the birthing room. It was in the hospital. It was there the second my child was born. That is how obsessed I was with addiction. I was addicted to addiction, because not even for 4 seconds after what is supposed to be the most wonderful moment of a woman's life, when she gives birth to this child, I give it away. I give it away to addiction, because I'm afraid of addiction. It's all in an effort. Oops, can you guys hear that? That's thunder. I'm in my backyard. Anyways, so where was I? I'm sorry, that thunder threw me off. Okay, so I was desperate, right? Bottom line is, we do desperate things for the ones we love. Desperate things. And I had 3 children with him, and we were years and years into our marriage when I decided to leave. And I had been contemplating leaving seriously for a while. My family had no idea what I was going through or how bad it was. I had not worked in 7 years. I was a stay-at-home mom. I had no savings. I didn't know anything about our finances. I was one of those women that believed a man should take care of the bills because the man works. And I am dyslexic, and have dysgraphia, so I'm terrible at numbers. Horrible. Get them reversed backwards. Just hopeless. So that disability that I have allowed me to make a very unhealthy decision and give up my autonomy over our finances, give up my vote. And I just pleaded ignorance. And so I let him make all these financial decisions. I didn't even know how many credit cards we had. I didn't know the balance of our bank account. That's how bad it was. I didn't open any bills. And not only did I not open any bills, all of my bills, all of my payments, all of my spending was monitored and scrutinized by him. So I didn't get to know anything about our finances. I gave away my vote on that. And also, I was held to such a higher standard for spending. So when I would come back from the grocery store, I would be so scared because he would itemize the grocery list, go through each thing and say, why did we need a gallon of milk? Why couldn't we get away with a carton? Why did you spend this kind of... And so everything became, am I managing money or am I spending money correctly? Will he get upset if I buy this? And the reason that was because the more money I spent on milk, the less there was for drugs, the less there was for beer, the less there was for porn, the less there was for gambling, the less there was for addiction. So finally, I was broke. I had like no job. I had complete ignorance over our finances. And I did not have any support. And I did not have any friends, true friends, that understood what I was going through. Because I was protecting him. I didn't want to tell people how bad things were, because then they'd tell me to leave, or they'd look at me differently and think I'm crazy for staying. Or they'd feel sorry for me, and they'd judge me, right? Or they'd judge him, and I wanted everybody to love him. So one day we were all at home, and he was using the bathroom. And our bathrooms, we had another bathroom, but it was out of order. It had broken. And my daughter, who was, I believe, 3 at the time, but you guys remember my dates, my numbers are not the best. So I think she was around 3. And she said, Mom, I've got to use the potty. And I said, okay, well, she's like, I can't use it. Daddy's in the bathroom. And so I went into our bathroom and I knocked on the door, and he was in that small little toilet area. And I said, hey, she needs to use the bathroom. And she's, folding her legs and jumping up and down and doing all the things that 3-year-olds need to do so they don't go to the bathroom. And he's like, okay, I'll be out in a second. And I heard him from behind the door. And I was like, okay, but really, we're going to have an accident. So can you just please hurry up? Okay, I'll be out. I knock on the door again a couple minutes later, and I'm like, listen, now I'm thinking, what do I do? Do I rush over to a neighbor's house, or do I? Anyways, the second that I knocked again, he opens the door, and out comes the smoke, the pot marijuana smoke. It just pours out of the room before he even exits the room. And he walks by me with glossy red eyes and such a smirk on his face that it was it gave me goosebumps, and it made my stomach flip inside out, the way he looked at me. And I look down for a second, and there's my daughter going to the bathroom in this room that has marijuana smoke. And you guys, I remember the spot on the wallpaper that I was looking at. I still can picture it now. That's how vivid and real this life-changing this moment was. I looked at the spot of the wallpaper and I thought, that's it. I'm done. It's over. I'm leaving. That's how crystal clear of a decision it was. It was unlike the decision that I'd ever felt before. Before it was, I don't want to leave. I still love him, but I should leave. And like, what can I do to help him? Maybe I could leave like temporarily, or maybe we could just get separated, or like, but God, the idea of like not being with him makes me feel panicked and gives me anxiety, and like all the reasons and excuses of why I shouldn't leave always came up when I tried to leave before I was ready. I would always think of the reasons why it wasn't the right decision, why I couldn't do it, why it was impossible. But this time, I knew it was different. And I knew it was different because all of a sudden, none of those excuses mattered. It was just clear as day. I've got to go. And I didn't even actually know at that moment why. I was just so flipping grateful to have finally reached a place of peace, which is what it felt like, knowing what I should do next. Like it was the torture of leaving, staying, going, coming. It was silent. It was done. There was no more going back and forth. The peace that washed over me when I finally knew in every ounce of my being that leaving was right. It didn't provide me an option, guys. It wasn't even like me sitting here saying to you, well, I did a pros and cons list. There was no lists. And you guys know how much I love my lists. I mean, I've made you all do lists almost every week. No list. This was it. It was just leave. Leave or die. Leave or die trying. And I almost did. I didn't know that at the time. But it was like there was no more excuses. It was just that crystal clear. And I had no answers. I had no answers on how I was going to do it. Because how does a mom of 3 with no money, no job, I mean, I couldn't like whip out a great resume. Yeah, I've been doing laundry and changing diapers for the last 7 years. I can cook mean brownies and a great pot of stew. What job does that get you into in the corporate world that pays the bills? And oh, by the way, if I were to go back to work, what the heck would I do with my kids who require daycare? Daycare expenses are ridiculous. So how would I make enough money to pay for daycare for my kids with no resume, with no work history? But all those obstacles, and broke. Like, how was I possibly going to pay for an apartment? How would I possibly pay for my electricity bill? And being lonely as hell and not having a group of friends to support me. I mean, what does that even look like, right? So, but it's funny when you come to that decision that you are done with an abusive relationship, which is what I was in. You don't care. You'll put up with anything to get away from the abuse. And so I went into my kitchen. This was back, I'm about to share with you how old I am. And I grabbed a phone book. And I looked at shelters, like women's shelters. And there were 3 in the area. Now, I didn't tell him this. And that was the other super convicting thing that I did. I did not go around and advertise to anyone that I was ready to leave. I didn't say it to him. And normally, you guys, in the past, leaving him would have required like a 3-act play. Like, I would have got in costume and grabbed the mic and like lectured all the reasons why I'm leaving. Ta-da, I am leaving you. All in hopes that maybe a sentence, a word, an effort, anything would convince him she really means it and I gotta change my ways. There was none of that. None of the drama. None of that drama. It was a silent, secure decision that came from such a place of strength and courage. And so when I grabbed the phone book and I looked through the shelters, there was 3 of them. And I called all 3 and left messages saying, how long can you take a woman and her 3 kids? And once I realized it wasn't that long, like this wasn't a long-term strategy, I sat back and thought, okay, so I need a plan. Now that I know that I am going to leave, it does not need to be immediately. I don't need to exit the premises and put myself out of commission in all areas and put my kids through a ton of stress. I'm pretty safe here for now. So I've been doing this for so long, a little bit longer is not going to be the end of the world. And so I said to myself, all right, I'm going to stay here in this situation and I am going to figure out a long-term plan. So I decided to stay there for a little while and come up with this plan. Now, I had to figure out the basics, right? Where was I going to live? How was I going to support us? And what was I going to do with this man? Was I going to divorce him? Was I going to just separate from him? How close in proximity did I need to be in order to continue our family? Or did I not want to continue our family? Did I feel necessary to get these kids as far away from addiction as possible? There was 1,000 questions that needed to be answered. How was I going to tell my family? What were the neighbors going to think? What do I need a lawyer? How do I find a lawyer? How am I going to pay a lawyer? All of these things were unanswered questions. But the truth of the matter is, I didn't need answers right away, all at once. Slowly, by putting one foot in front of another, the answers started to come. And here's the truth, because I always believe in telling you loving, hard truths. All the answers were definitely not easy. It took me a full year to finally leave, to physically leave. And I got support from so many people who I never expected, and didn't get support from people who I thought would certainly be there for me. Like I would have banked on them. So it surprised me. Everything about divorcing an addict surprised me. There was nothing, no book out there that tells you how to do that. There's no like workshop you could take, right? I think the person that had the most experience in that was my lawyer. Not surprisingly when I say so, but there was so many surprises and everything was new, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but it was the best decision for me I ever made. Not only for me, but for my children. And they were the ones I was worried the most about. Are they going to hate me? Are they going to blame me? What is going to happen to them if they have to spend time alone with their dad and he's not sober? What am I possibly going to do to support them? These are all questions that if you're thinking about and you're worried about, that are normal. They're normal. And the truth of the matter is that what happened for me is going to be different for what happens to you. So there's not this one solution out there that's going to be magical and fits for everyone. But so many of you guys I know say, how do I know if leaving is right for me? How do I know if to stay or to go? And you guys know we have a program that helps you answer that and helps you prepare for that, helps walk you through all of the steps that you would need in order to arrive at a decision. But for this, I just wanted to share what my experience was like, that this is how I arrived there, and there was no regrets, none. Now, I also want to do a podcast about what is it like to be a single mom? What is it like to start dating again? Because that's super weird. How do you know the person that you're dating isn't a replication of the person you just got divorced from or broke up with? Like, how do you trust this other human being who you're kind of interested in but incredibly fearful of? Because that's a whole process. How do you learn to trust again? And like, as exciting as it is to start thinking about the idea of being with somebody else, it's a weird, funky thing. You feel guilty, and sometimes you still mourn the loss of your marriage a little bit, because when you start dating somebody else, it's like it becomes so real that it's over with this other person. So we're going to do more podcasts about that, because I know you guys have asked me about that. But just for today, I wanted to share that's how I arrived at leaving, and that's what leaving felt like for me. And so I hope you found that helpful. I know it's confusing, guys. I know that it's torture. I know that it's incredibly lonely, and that you doubt yourself constantly because this disease tries to convince you you're wrong, and that you don't deserve happiness, and that this is your fault, or at least partly your fault, and that you'll never succeed, right? Those are the lies I bought. That's what kept me strapped in so long. Wasn't just the fact that I felt like I loved him, but also the fact that I was like, well, this is as good as it's going to get, because look at him. He's good looking, he's charming, he's so funny, and he's incredibly smart. You guys, he used to be my math tutor in high school, and we were in the same grade, and he was like a genius. I mean, he was the full package. And I thought what kept me trapped for so long is thinking, this is the best I can do. I never even imagined I could do this good. He's everything. I'm nothing. I can't ever find a guy like this again. And that's such a lie, because, and I can go into this more about dating again, but the lie is that you don't deserve something better. But also, I think there was a part of me that my ex-husband affirmed to me his addiction, his struggle with addiction, and making me feel so belittled and so small and so broken and insignificant and unlovable, that it was almost like I was subconsciously attracted to a man who confirmed that about myself. Like, I secretly always believed that, because I had incredibly low self-esteem, and I attracted a man into my life that constantly reminded me just how bad I was. There's a woman I was reading about, an actress. She's a famous actress, and she had to call the police on her boyfriend several times for domestic abuse. And there was one final time where the police came and she pressed charges, and he went to jail. And he has a history, not just with her, but in the past, of physically abusing women. And he just got out of jail, and she is now dating him again. Now, to normal people, you read a story like that, or people would read a story like that and say, that's just stupid. Doesn't even make sense. But to you and me, I get it. I think you do too. It's like, until you change, your belief about what you deserve and who you are, you're constantly going to go back to people who affirm the negative about you. And that transition is what we talk about in this community when we say the work starts with you. It has nothing to do with their sobriety. It is nothing, your happiness does not reside on them getting sober or not. It doesn't have anything to do with their drinking or drug use, which is crazy, I know, because you and I both believed at a point in time where if they just got sober, it would unlock the key to our happiness. But I realized in my marriage that actually is so false, that I found my best self, the person I was growing into become, that doesn't make sense. The person I found my confidence. I found who I was. And I am certainly not sitting here saying, I found perfection. No, nope. Still have tons of flaws, right? Very, very flawed. But I found that I wasn't the worst. And I found that I was so deserving. I worked on myself, got my confidence back, or maybe for the first time in my life during that year that I was planning, that immediately the type of person that I was attracted to, who was once a very abusive human being, who was very sick, my radar for attractiveness changed. It shifted. It literally shifted from a very unhealthy man. And then when I remarried, it was a man that I would have never considered 5-10 years ago. And I lovingly say that. I say that all the time. He's the best thing that ever happened to me. He is the rock of my world. I'm madly in love with him. But he's too healthy. He was too healthy for me. He was too normal. He was too boring. He didn't need fixing. He doesn't need solving. He's not looking for me to make him better. What do I have to offer a man like that, right? That's how I got my self-worth. That was my commodity. But that was when I was sick and I had a lack of self-esteem. And I found myself subconsciously attracted to men who continued to tell me, yeah, you suck. Because I felt like I sucked. I came into that relationship. My ex-husband did not cause me to have low self-esteem. I entered that relationship with that baggage already. I came into this relationship broken too. And I'm rewriting our website right now, and I just worked on that yesterday, where I was like, I was broken too. It's two broken people, his with addiction and me with feeling terrible about myself. And we were trying to make it work. We were trying to heal one another, or get what was broken healed within us through our love with one another. And that just does not work. It leaves, especially if one person ends up doing the work and healing themselves in a way, and then the other person is left behind, still struggling. Well, that doesn't work either. In an ideal situation, you need, for the most part, two healthy people, whole people who know their worth, who know their weight, who know what they have to offer, and who also know what they need. And so as I was evolving and changing and stopped pouring into my husband at that time, pouring all my efforts into getting him sober, but I started to actually put all of that energy into getting myself better, to healing me, to fixing me. And that's a lot of work. When I did that for that year, all of a sudden, what I once found so attractive became so unattractive. And I saw clearly. It was like the scales were being removed one by one off my eyes, just plucked off. And I woke up one day and said, oh my gosh, I'm so terribly sorry that I arrived in this situation. And I'm so sorry that I cannot be with this man anymore and be his cheerleader and be his fan and be his advocate. But that's no longer, I recognize that never served me, and it's definitely not going to serve my kids. And so I then left and eventually dated my husband, whom was very healthy. And that was my new category of attractiveness, was a very low-key, less far, like no drama, reliable, honest, safe man. And that became so attractive to me, not only as a woman, but as a mother. Because I wanted I wanted to sort of right my wrongs I was raising 3 young kids up in a very dysfunctional family, and it was. Like, there's no making that nice. That was really difficult for them. Really difficult to grow up in a household with addiction. That's not fair to those kids, period. It's not. And so when I left, I made myself a promise that whoever I would end up with, if I ever were to end up with another person, that I would make sure that they would be in a very stable and safe and loving environment and home. That they would have, their home went from being a war zone and probably the most unsafe place in their life to being a place of rest and a place of solitude and a place of love. So I'll talk more about that next time, but okay, that's it, guys. I love you, and I'm here for you. And that I am not sharing this with you to sit there and brag. I would never, ever, I would die if I was coming across that way. I am not sitting here saying, I've got it all figured out, and look at me, I'm so great. No, I don't have anything figured out. My life is not perfect. My kids are not these stellar, they're amazing people. I'm very proud of them. And also, we are human beings making human errors, living normal human lives every day, just like you. So please, nothing special here to look at, Definitely not. And Tubby agrees with me. Can you hear her? She just barked in the background. Okay, she's like, yes, definitely nothing special going on in this house. The dog agrees. She sees it all. This podcast is created for your support, encouragement, and entertainment with my personal thoughts and beliefs. We are bonded together by the fact that we love someone suffering from addiction. This is not intended as a substitute for therapy or advice from a professional.